In this video, I'll be talking about greed and my arrival at the awareness of greed, because it's a relatively new awareness that I might be greedy. And I'll start with the masking of greed, because I've never been particularly materialistic. To a large extent, I've been conflict avoidant. It's win-win or no deal. Take it or leave it. I've never had ambition to grow my company. I've loved keeping it small and beautiful. So I didn't really understand my relationship with greed. So then the clues. A number of clients or neighbors of clients struck me as incredibly destructively greedy. One client, they want it like this, but not like that. They want like this. So basically, they want it to be perfect. But they don't want to pay too much, right? And then they don't want it to happen, before 10 a.m., right? Normally work starts 8 a.m. They don't want it to start before 10 a.m. And then not when the tenant is doing this and not when they're doing this. Oh, and then there's the parking. We can't park here and we can't park there. And we can't park there. And then, could you remind me? Like, I forgot what you said. Could you remind me? And then you didn't remind me good enough, right? I forgot all this stuff. I'm not doing my job, but you didn't do it good enough at reminding me. I was like, fuck you, right? And then he's devastated, right? It's like, maybe I'm asking a bit too much, right? Don't leave me, like someone take care of me. So the greed of demand, the greed of perfection. And it really irritated me. It struck me as incredibly damaging. And that's when I got an inkling that that's how some people experience me in certain situations. I want this, but not like that, and that's not good enough. And it's above average, right? So when above average, well above average, isn't good enough, that's greed, right? Particularly when there's a sense like, but I don't want to pay more, I don't want to give more. So that was one client. And another neighbor of a client, this wasn't good enough and that wasn't good enough, but they didn't want to pay a penny. They wanted my client to pay for everything to be done for their benefit, and just incredibly abusive and hostile, etc. And again, someone I would have walked away from, and my client kind of negotiated a pretty generous, approach. With that client. And so, again, another message of greed. And then there's the symptoms of greed. So it's, so these are where I'm coming at greed from these examples. And another client before that, where, I gave them a discount. And I did this for free. And we got it done early. But this little thing wasn't right? And she was all worked up. And again, it just seemed like the greed is killing the energy. It's killing the flow. So if I'm surrounded by greed that's killing the energy, one way to interpret that dream is that greed is me relating to me, right? If you interpret dreams, one of the more important ways to interpret a night dream is that you're everyone in the dream. You're the one being killed by greed, suffocated by greed, but you're also the greedy one. And so that's another, so that's saying, okay, greed is coming up as a theme. So that's the first window into greed. Then the next window is trying to imagine what it's been like for some of the professionals that I've hired to work with me, right? As a highly sensitive person, as an idealist, as someone that wants the most for the least. Okay, so, okay. So there's a window into that life-killing aspect of greed. And then there's another clue, right? There's another clue, because most of the life and growth that I've been experiencing over the past few years has come from being of service, right? I exhausted the direction of let the world become more effective, more excellent, more perfect for me, right? I hit a barrier. I couldn't find a more perfect lover, and they were all, deeply dissatisfying in this way or that way, right? So, but I couldn't find, I'd reached my wall, right? Well, maybe I could connect with this person in this way, and then we could have this beautiful experience. But no, that person isn't self-reliant, and this person isn't a good communicator, and this person is incredibly hypocritical, and this person is dishonest, etc. And but there's no one rising to that challenge. Right? So I'm dissatisfied. So I'm also disengaging and more critical. But being more disengaging and more critical doesn't produce better results. It produces worse results. So I had climbed and moved towards more excellence and better and celebrated that, but it wasn't climbing anymore. And criticizing that wasn't helping. So that was a wall, right? And the cultural dynamic, it's so boring just making money to make money, and everyone's spending money. It's so dissatisfying. So, cultural criticism had also, but who wants to listen to a cultural critic? So I'd hit walls, and then I was pouting about that. The world is not living up to my standards. Nobody seems interested in this. How miserable. Look at all that I could be if only the world evoked a better version of me. Like, I'd love to be a better version of me, just nobody's evoking that, right? Why isn't anyone asking these questions so that I could answer them? Why isn't, people coming in with these requests so that I could help them, and not doing this so it wouldn't irritate me? So that dead end, right? I hit a wall. And, and that was descending into stagnation and bitterness, right? Because, it looked like so many things I was expending more energy than it returned to me. I invite 100 people to do this, and 3 say yes, and they're wonderful yeses, but all that energy asking 100 to get those 3, it's not returning a sustainable yield. So what to do, and traveling the world and finding this and this and this, but then there's this problem and that problem, right? So, none of this was registering as greed. But as I look back and look at where my life has grown over the last, some years, marrying the person that I could be most useful to, that was that was 180 degrees, right? So rather than looking for the person who could be most useful to me and saying, oh, this is dreadful, right? Saying, look, the reality is I seem to be able to be really useful for this human being. So let's be useful. That was a new track, and it led to unexpected well-being for me. I didn't understand how or why at the time, I just thought this seems to be the person I'm most useful for. So let's spend more time being useful. And forming a nonprofit to maximize well-being for other people. And then growing my business so that I could donate more money to my nonprofit. These seem to be useful directions, and getting healthier so that I could make more money growing my business so that I could give more to others. So that seems to be the direction of growth and well-being. How to be most useful in meaningful ways to people that need benefit, that I can help in some ways. Giving some people in my crew a loan, a no-interest loan to help them do this and do that, and watching all the positive energy that creates. Giving one of my crews a big, $5 an hour raise, just all of you. You're all getting a $5 raise. Why? So that you can be happier, right? Doing that and watching how much wealth and benefit came from that. That thread of serving more, giving more, writing books, right? Writing books and sharing those books, creating videos. That seems to be a useful trend. And most recently, I saw kind of the perfect house at a good price, and I got great vibes about it. And I got all this kind of message like, the house will be yours, you can have it. And so my attitude was, well, why offer a high price for it, right? If it's going to be mine and all these things are expensive and blah, 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 why not get it for an even lower price? And right then, someone came in and bid a higher price, and I lost the house. And I felt a lot of self-pity and, all that goodwill and that vibe of this was my house. And, the world didn't give me the house, right? And I realized, that's a clue, right? So I played that wrong. I played that as I want more for less because it's being offered to me. So I didn't play it as, I'm going to step up and give more. There was a day or so I felt all this gratitude, that this gift was giving to me and stuff, but I didn't give it to myself, right? I wanted it to be low rather than just it was the best value on the market, right? So I looked around and there's the best value. It's the best neighbors, the best neighborhood, the best price per square foot. It had the best expansion opportunities. So it's the best of anything that's on the market. And it's already a great price. And I have all this great vibe. But I thought, well, why pay full price if I'm going to get it anyway, right? Why not offer and see, every $5,000 counts was my thought. We'll put more. I played that wrong. Meaning life was saying, here's this wonderful opportunity to give. And this is also an interesting insight because my wife is in some ways more interested in owning a house than I am. And this is part of that trend where being of service and making her happier has led to more happiness than trying to get her to make me happy. Right? When I try and get her to make me happy, it's incredibly frustrating and irritating. What, she didn't do this and this and this. But when I do things that improve her happiness, I feel happy. I feel great. So that's the direction, right? And so, so So I'm recognizing greed as one, criticism of reality. It's not good enough. Two, entitlement, demands and entitlement. Three, withdrawing. If it's not good enough for me, I'm withdrawing, meaning I've withdrawn from multiple interactions. It's not serving me enough. So that's a form of greed. I'm withholding my energy. I'm not going to invest energy into this because it's not up to my standards. I didn't understand that that was greed, that was killing me as well as energy flow in a variety of ways. And so, that's, so now I know how I should have played that house in terms of that, receiving and serving, which would have been to be incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to have the best option in the market, to accept that things aren't perfect because that's my opportunity to make them better. That it's a pleasure and an honor to do something to make my wife happier and to be around a happy person and to participate in her growth. And that this is another way to serve, and that buying a house is also a way to give more, right? Because then we can improve it, make various, improvements to the house and give more. So that's my relatively new window into one, an awareness of my greed. Two, an awareness of, how I didn't see it. Three, an awareness of how my somewhat surprising, meaning a lot of these things have caught me by surprise because I didn't understand that I was greedy in having to have things my way, having things be perfect. That's a kind of greed. I'm not a materialist greed, but I want everything my way, and just not serving and giving as punishing reality, but really punishing myself, right? Because when you don't flow energy, you die. I've been dying in areas because of greed. And that's, yeah. And so so it's a really big awareness. Now, my anchor point to kind of solidify this kind of message in of awareness that greed is I have a lot of 5 energy on the Enneagram, which is thinker energy. And that deteriorates to greed. And, and I was thinking it was kind of control type of like not sharing knowledge. I always share knowledge, right? So I didn't see it there, but I, knowing that thinkers deteriorate to greed, and that I have a lot of that strong energy. This then is another clue, kind of look at greed. So I'm looking at greed and allowing success that isn't perfect, allowing praise, allowing flow that isn't, quite the way that I want it. Learning more from greedy, irritating people, how I can be greedy and irritating, and using that, how to serve more, how to give more, how to flow more, how to be more useful, and make things better. To be responsible, able and willing to respond, to create a better world rather than to complain and pout that it isn't better in the way that I can see. And then the last little bit is I can understand the basis for greed for a thinker. Like the basis of all of this, of every criticism and every aspiration and every demand, is I can visualize and see the world 10 times better than it is. I can visualize an interaction, and I can say, this is what we could have done that would have been 10 times better, but I can't do it because you're too dumb. You don't see it, right? You don't even have the humility to grasp that it could have been 10 times better. So you didn't allow the time, you didn't ask the question, and you didn't listen to the volunteered. You can't see it, right? So a thinker, a perceiver, a creator in the ideal world can see things better than most. And so there's a tendency to want them to be better, right? So I see things better than they are. I see that they can be done as a designer, and I want them. But then the question is, of course, where the greed can come in is I want it to be given to me. I want other people to get it and give it to me so that I don't have to. That's where the greed comes in. Versus the transformative energy, I think, of the visionary of the five is I see it clearly and I want it. So I'm going to make the extra effort and energy to make it happen. And I am going to become more in the process. And then rather than being resented for my entitlement, I can be an inspiration based on the fact that I work harder and with more clarity than many and experience the greatest gift of becoming more. You see, because that's the thing, like I'm not going to give the world everything perfectly and do all the work. Why do I have to work harder? That's been the martyr kind of energy around this. I'm tired of it. Why the fuck do I have to ask 1,000 women to have a peak experience to get 5 or so to say yes, and what a great experience that was? And it's like, yeah, why the fuck isn't someone asking me, right? Why do I have to do all the fucking work? That's a lot of the hurt, the anger, etc. And so it's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing the fucking game, right? I do all the work. I do all the visioning. I take all the risk. I teach you how to, I do, and you just play along clumsily and it's just so fucking irritating. And there's anger about that, of course. Why don't you get it? Why don't you have a vision and teach me how to do it so that it can be better? Yeah, there's hurt, there's tiredness, there's frustration, there's sadness around that. So I'm not playing anymore, right? You don't get to have me working my ass off so that you can show up and have this wonderful experience of entitled receiving, right? But, and yes, there are a lot of greedy people in a scarcity mentality that are lazy and want other people to do it. There's a lot of women that, want a man to be all these things and provide her so that she doesn't have to, and it's disgusting, right? Right, but there's also people that want to grow, and there's also, people that didn't have this opportunity and that, waiting for this, right, and do want to grow, and it's fun to be around that growth. And it's an honor to serve. It's an honor to have to become more, to grow more, in order to be more, in order to become more, in order to realize more of my ideals. That's an honor. It's a great possibility, probability. And trying to get the most and more and get paid back, like all of my ideas that have benefited my life more than most people's life. So that's kind of my window into the diagnosis of and the beginning of a healing, right? To first of all differentiate between greedy people and generous people, because it doesn't help them. It doesn't help anyone else to let someone stay small and entitled who could become more and be useful. And it doesn't help me to sit around complaining. It helps me to start creating, to co-create the reality that I dream about.